Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Through Imperial Eyes. We are here on the first episode of Imperial Cantina, where we sit down with a guest, have a drink, and talk about Star Wars one movie at a time. As always, I am your host, Braydon Leadbetter.
I'm Daleen, your co-host.
Today, we have a very special guest. You know him from the Pointless Sports Opinions podcast, and here to dive deep into Star Wars A New Hope, we have Chase Jungewaelter with us. How you doing, Chase?
I'm doing good, guys. I'm glad I finally got on. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, before we even started the podcast, the first person I reached out to was Chase to be on the podcast because I know he's wanting to talk Star Wars with us for so long.
Yeah, I'm antsy, man. I gotta get going.
Yeah. So Jackson, we'll start with you. What have you been up to in the past few days since we've talked Star Wars wise?
I'm trying to finish a certain point of view, which that works out that we're talking about A New Hope today because I can kind of share some of that. So that's kind of really just been my main thing. I've just been working. Other than that, I haven't had the time.
Yeah. Chase, what have you been up to in the Star Wars realm? What have you been watching, listening to, reading, anything?
You're gonna be pumped. You're gonna be excited. Because I've been starting to watch Rebels. I got back into it. I'm in season 3 now. I'm going. I'm going strong.
You're almost done with it. Yeah.
I know. And it's actually I remember when I was messaging you, I was like, yeah, I don't really like it. I watched it again. I love it. I love it. It's great.
You have to give it a chance.
And I also watched Clone Wars. So, I watched Clone Wars and go to Rebels. It was kind of like the same tone.
It's very satisfying with those finished up arcs and seeing those characters again. Yeah,
exactly. And the Mandalorian season, it was like, okay, this is I'm into it.
Yeah, me and you are kind of yin and yang because I haven't finished Clone Wars yet, and you haven't finished Rebels yet. So we're on a race to see who finishes first. But lately, I haven't really been doing much recently, only because I've been watching the Lord of the Rings movies again. I do like a yearly watch through with those two. I just started Two Towers. Welcome to Lord of the Rings talk. We want to start kind of this episode by asking Chase just a couple general Star Wars questions. So just off the bat, what do you think was your first introduction to Star Wars?
So I have a cousin in my life, and his name's Tony, and he was always like the guy I looked up to, even from when I was a kid. Yeah. Like, he just had a great personality. He was always funny, and he was always like, hey, be yourself type of kind of guy. And I used to stay the night at my aunt's house on the weekends, like just randomly, just for fun. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was over there one time, and I was bored because there's nothing to watch. You know, that was back in the day when she had like the antenna cable stuff. So it's like
you gotta put the aluminum foil on the antennas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're having me stand by the TV to change it. But so it was either watch Channel 2 News or my aunt's like, hey, like your cousin Tony likes this. Like, this is called Star Wars. And I was like, okay. And the first one I ever watched was New Hope. And
wow.
I started right at the beginning. And I remember as a 6-year-old kid sitting and watching an entire film, which watching my nephew now who can't even sit 20 minutes watching a TV show. Yeah. Like I'm in shock that I even had, but I remember sitting in and I asked my aunt like 30 questions. She had no idea what was going on, you know, but that was my first introduction. I just remember being just enamored by how good the movie was. And I was only 6.
And it's so crazy how, like, when you're a kid, you don't realize that this movie was made 30 years prior.
Oh, yeah. No,
it's so crazy how well everything holds up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I put on, like, thoughts of it is just, man, like, even the CGI, it's like, I watched Back to the Future the other day, and, like, the jokes don't hold up really as well anymore. And, like, there's a couple, like, technology things where you're like, that's kind of cheesy, that's kind of corny. I didn't think that at all watching New Hope. So, and
I think it helps that, you know, with things like Back to the Future, they're kind of like predicting what they think Earth will be like 30 years from now. And with Star Wars, you don't have to worry about that. It's a galaxy far, far away.
We're figuring it out as we go.
We're just doing our own thing. They were saying like Alderaan instead of Alderaan, and like,
it's
like,
regional.
You know what?
It's regional.
It's slang. It's
like
slang.
Missouri in Missouri. You know.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, I know this is kind of a hard question because it's like picking a favorite child, but who do you think your favorite Star Wars character is?
Man, that's a really good question. I might give an answer that's, I'm going to even say on my own part that it's not that good.
There's no wrong answers.
But I like General Grievous. General Grievous was my boy.
Wow.
Like, and I guess it was because, 13-year-old, just started puberty Chase is watching Star Wars, and you get a guy with 4 arms out there, mowing down people and going hard on Obi-Wan, even though the whole movie he's running away the whole time.
I kind of agree, though, because I remember being a kid going to see Revenge of the Sith and being like, I don't know who that is, but he's cool. He's got 4 of those. That's awesome.
The first time he pulled out the 4 arm, oh my goodness. It was, I watched it in the movies, and I will never forget it because I was just like, this is going to be cool. I just got so chills watching it. So him, Darth Maul's up there too, especially like what he's done for the series like Clone Wars and Rebels, and I mean even the Solo story. I like Maul a lot. So yeah, those are probably my top 2. I don't really have a lot of Jedis. That's my only problem.
So you like the dark side of the Force.
I do. I've always rooted for the villain, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you gotten to kind of the end of Maul's arc in Rebels? I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it.
I know what happens.
Okay, so spoilers for Rebels if you are listening and you haven't seen Rebels and you don't want to know what happens. But man, dude, the end of Maul is so good.
He finally
Twin Sons. That episode is so good.
Are we gonna move on, like talk about it, or are you wanting to? We need to get back on track, and this is the problem with me. I jump all over the place.
It's okay. Really quick, if you do have comments about it, feel free.
I loved it just because Maul finally got what he wanted. He finally got to see Kenobi. And guess what? I love it too because it's Prime Kenobi. This is like watching, Prime Batman, like not broke my back after Bane Batman, or I'm learning how to fight from Ra's al Ghul Batman. No, this is the Batman that's killing everybody. We got to see Prime Kenobi defending Luke, and he just mows him down as quickly as possible. In the last little scene between the two, it was emotional. It's like these two had such a strong connection, and it's amazing how a protagonist and an antagonist can have as much of a connection as two friends almost.
Well, that's reading why I liked it. What I read the other day, and it was talking about that scene, and it was like it's heartbreaking knowing that Maul died by the hand of the person he was probably the closest person he could call a friend. And it's just like that hatred forever, his entire life, and it's the only person he could connect with.
Yeah, and it's so poetic because welcome to Star Wars Rebels talk, where you see Kenobi and he does this certain move, and I know Sam Witwer went into it on I think it was some kind of there was an autograph signing and he was talking about it, but he's talking about how and before he fights Maul, he does the stance of each of his masters. He does a Qui-Gon thing, he goes, and then he Qui-Gon, does a young Obi-Wan.
He does the 2 fingers. And
then he goes to Ben Kenobi.
Yeah, Ben Kenobi.
Right there.
I'm getting close to the part now, so I might just as soon as we're done with this, I'm jumping on, finishing out the series.
It's
kind of
so
fun.
great.
I think I might watch some TV now.
It's just so great, the attention to detail Dave Filoni has for characters we love like Kenobi. But anyway, we'll move on really quick. I just have 2 more questions for you before we actually we dive deep into A New Hope here. This is a very loaded question, but why do you love Star Wars? What speaks to you when it comes to Star Wars?
Just for me, I mean, it's the perfect combination of action and storytelling. I feel like with especially nowadays, you get the new Jurassic Park movies and stuff like that. They're cool, but it's the story doesn't really hold up to the point where it's you're emotionally invested in it. Every single time, and Star Wars is the only thing. Star Wars, I'm an emotional guy. Don't get me wrong. I cry at movies all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But Star Wars at the very beginning is the only movie that ever makes me cry. Because that first introduction, everything they have is so nostalgic And in a good way, where it's not like, like Dumb and Dumber 2 or anything like that kind of nostalgia. No, it's like actual good nostalgia where they just know how to incorporate and show, just make you express every feeling that you can have, like comedy, even some romance, even if, you're not a fan of the prequel series. I don't blame you, but, it just, I've never had more emotional roller coaster. I hate using that cliche, but that's what I feel like whenever I watch a Star Wars film. And every time it's the worst I always say the worst Star Wars film I've ever watched is still one of my favorite movies. And that's saying something.
That's the thing is, a lot of people want to look at Star Wars films and pick them apart. But when I think about it, there is no Star Wars films. There's Star Wars, and you either love Star Wars or you don't love Star Wars.
Yeah,
and that's it. No one has cried like a baby more than me watching The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
I actually just rewatched The Last Jedi too, just for you. I rewatched it, and guess what? I moved it to my top 5 list.
That is for me. That is the deepest Star Wars film, and it moves me so much, in ways that I don't know what it is about the sequels that speak to me on such a profound level.
Oh, I watched Force Awakens like 7 times, and again, I love Force Awakens.
Yeah. But anyway, one last question before we actually get into what people are tuning in for. What is your most anticipated Star Wars piece of content that's coming out? Whether it's a show, whether it's a movie that's coming out, what are you anticipating the most? What are you most excited for?
I'm really curious what they're going to do in the new Mandalorian series. Yeah. But I mean, they just have so much coming out that's going to be great. Like that Ahsoka series. That one, that one really is
too much Star Wars. It's not a bad thing, but it's never too much Star Wars.
It's like there's just so much coming out, and I'm gonna watch all of it. And there's not many franchises where you want to watch every single bit of media that they put out. But that one, I mean, the Kenobi, obviously, I think Kenobi's going to be up to par, if not more, with like the Mandalorian. But that's also where I'm kind of 50-50 on the Kenobi series, just because watching New Hope, it was, I guess I'll dive into a little. Like it was a big moment when Obi-Wan and Darth Vader see each other again. Yeah, I hope, and I heard Hayden Christensen's reprising his role. I hope it's like some flashbacks, because I don't want them to see each other again. I want the last time they see each other was that fight on Mustafar. I don't want it to be.
Here's the thing. Kathleen Kennedy has already stated in that whole investors meeting thing where she kind of dove into it, is she said that this is going to be like a rematch of the century.
See, that's cool, but at the same time, that's what made the New Hope fight so good.
Yeah, and I agree.
Even though the fight's kind of
one of my concerns is that the show might take away from what we love about A New Hope, and that's the final confrontation with Vader and how deep that is.
It almost goes to what Chase just said about nostalgia, is that they almost have to worry about making sure it's not just this really cool 6-episode action pack. Ewan McGregor's fighting Darth Vader, whereas more is we want like that. We want traumatic Obi-Wan. We want PTSD Kenobi. We want, him
I want a
dealing
character
with
piece.
things and problems. I want a character piece.
Yes. Yeah, I want all that, and I think me and Jackson agree that's our most anticipated new Star Wars project that's coming out too.
I've got the man's lightsaber tattooed on me, so like anything about Kenobi is going to be
that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, right?
For audio listeners, he is showing his Kenobi tattoo
arm
on his bicep.
And it is a beautiful tattoo. Whoever did that did a great job.
He drew it in like 20 minutes too. I showed up for the appointment, and they didn't have it on file, so I showed him the picture that I wanted, and he drew it up real quick.
Cool.
I can barely sign my name.
So, getting into the main discussion of why everybody's tuning in right now, and the title of the podcast, A New Hope. So let's just start off. Let's start with you, Chase, since you're the guest. what are your overall, what's your big picture reaction of the film itself? Like, what does this film mean to you?
I was so surprised how in-depth the story is. So this is literally this is building block number 1 of the entire franchise. And, like, I always cross-compare, different franchises. Like, you look at, like, Halo 1. Like, Halo 1 has no story. Like, it's nothing. It's just blowing stuff up and stuff. And Star Wars, the first Star Wars, New Hope, just sets up everything. Just all the little plot lines, everything, it sets up, it's building block number 1 of that entire franchise, and it holds up so well. I was amazed how, because I was a little afraid, because I haven't watched it in a couple years, so I was kind of afraid I was going to watch it and be like, all right, this is finally to the point where it's outdated to me. No. I loved all of it. I got up on the little references, characters that were in Rogue One that came over, and like, just the little things that make the Star Wars universe great. It all started at New Hope. So New Hope is the founding father of Star Wars to me.
Yeah, it really is. It truly is. Before I chime in, Jackson, I know you have some thoughts on A New Hope because you've mentioned them before on the show. What are your thoughts?
Let me give my actual critique of it, and then I will tell you my personal thought of it, of how I moved on with that. I completely agree with Chase. Obviously, it is block number 1. It is George Lucas did such a good job at creating a world that feels so natural and already lived in. And that just the simplest dialogue, tells you so much backstory. The stuff about the Clone Wars, in the very beginning that you're like, wow, that's really cool. And obviously we know now what all that was, but back in 77, there's so much that he built, so much history that it was just spewing with all of this world building and this creativity with it. That being said, the first half of the movie is nothing but exposition, and everything on Tatooine I think is boring. I love it. I love it.
I could not disagree with you more.
I'm in the same boat. What?
See, here's the thing. It's because you watch it and you're like, oh, that's so cool. That's great world building. And I do really like the scene with Luke and Obi-Wan when they actually watch the full recording, and Obi-Wan's like, you got to go to Alderaan with me. And Luke's like, I'm not going to Alderaan with you. I love that scene. But you think about it, half the movie's them puddling around on Tatooine and just sharing exposition and world building, and then
but here's the thing,
then they're like, here's Han Solo, he's gonna get us to Alderaan, and then that's here's when the movie
I think that is why I love the movie, is that it can take these little mundane, what would be mundane in ordinary world situations, and make them awesome and epic. Because here's the thing about A New Hope. The first 10 minutes are so responsible for so many people's love of the entire franchise. Because, if you look at it, in the first 10 minutes, you get C-3PO and R2. You get first introduced to them. And then you also get introduced to Vader. And then you get introduced to Luke.
Leia. You meet Leia on the ship.
Leia, too.
And Leia. You meet Leia, too. That is the foundation of Star Wars in and of itself right there. If you think of Star Wars, those are a lot of the characters that come up in your head when you think of Star Wars.
It's so nonchalant too. It's these such important characters that it's just oh yeah, by the way, this is what they're doing. That's fun.
Here's the thing. The way the story is told, you don't get taken to another point in the story unless a character is taking you there. So if C-3PO and R2 weren't sent away on the escape pod and we just cut to Tatooine, how jarring would that be if C-3PO and R2 weren't the ones who took you to Tatooine?
Well, that's
if they just go ahead.
There's a deleted scene, and it's actually in the novel too, because I have the original trilogy novelizations.
The big Starklighter thing, yeah.
There's a scene where Luke's working on one of the moisture towers, and he looks up and he sees the sparks from the Tantive 4.
And here's the thing, that was in the original cut.
Yeah, it's a fully film scene. They recorded it and all.
And I think it was so genius to cut that out and just let the droids take us to Tatooine organically.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much I love about this movie. I think it is in my top 5 of the Star Wars films, but I just think that there's so much to love about this movie, and we will get into it getting into this review. But I just want to ask you guys, starting with Chase, how does this movie rank in your definitive, if you have a definitive ranking of the Star Wars movies?
So I have 2 different rankings. I have like my favorite Star Wars and the ones I think are the best. So in my favorite ranking, I have it 4th. And all time, I rank it 2. I rank it right behind Empire Strikes Back, just because it sets everything up. And Empire Strikes Back, it's hard to make a good sequel, as we all know in Hollywood. Like, it's hard to make a good sequel.
and to make the best sequel instead.
The best sequel ever. Yeah. And have maybe the biggest plot line of movie history on top of it. So it's hard to hold your own against Empire Strikes Back. But I was surprised how high. I had it as like my 5th favorite Star Wars media content, and then my 4th favorite movie.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I do agree with you there. Jackson, what do you think?
I kind of agree too. It's number 4 in my favorites, but it's number 3 in... No, well, maybe it is number 2. I think it is number 2 of just how it's made, Because like Empire, of course, holds that like spot. That's like the Star Wars movie. Like that's I can't wait for that one. Anyway, when it comes to personal favorite, it's 4, and that's solely because I'm a simp for Revenge of the Sith, and it gets a spot above it.
I feel you. Yeah. I feel you. Right? That is my favorite Star Wars movie, honestly.
My favorites. Wow, really? My favorite's Return of the Jedi.
That's my number 1. That's a good one too.
It's the nostalgia for me.
Everybody here knows what my favorite Star Wars movie is.
Braydon, do you like The Last Jedi? Are you the 1% that likes?
You're a big Clone Wars guy, right? Phantom Menace.
Totally. You know what? I do like the Phantom Menace a lot.
I like it too, just for the fight scene. The fight scene's good.
But I think the way this movie ranks for me is, like you guys have said, I do kind of have a list of my favorite and just like, I don't want to say objective, but like critically favorite.
Production wise,
yeah. What I just like to watch and what I think critics would like to watch. But I think overall for me, my ranking, it is in the top 5. I would say it goes Last Jedi, Empire, and then The Rise of Skywalker, and then this one. That is a very controversial opinion. I understand.
It's a very hot take.
I got some faces, but I think that as of right now, that is my ranking.
Well, thank you for listening, guys. Braydon ruined the show, giving us that.
I ruined the show. We just lost like 17 listeners right there.
My favorite is the Star Wars Christmas Story.
it's the Lego Christmas special.
Yeah.
It's a Christmas story.
Which, fun fact, was the first introduction of Boba Fett.
True.
The Muppet Show is on Disney Plus now, and in the final season, the cast of Star Wars are the hosts. And I've been inching my way through it, but I'm like real excited to watch that one.
There you go, fans. Stay tuned.
No, but yeah, I think it is in my top 5. So I think there's just something about this movie that is so comforting to watch.
I agree. I love that. That's the perfect word for it, is comforting. Because it's a smooth ride.
Yeah.
And you were talking earlier, like the randomness of it. Like literally C-3PO and R2 fall on this planet and then eventually leads to the destruction of the Death Star.
It's the fact that you are emotionally attached to non-living beings.
Oh yeah.
And the effectiveness. Go ahead, Jackson.
That when the Death Star blows up and 3 million people die on it, goes right over your head.
And the great thing is about Star Wars canon is you get into a lot of the emotional impact of that in things like Lost Stars and a lot of the novels which you've read too, Jackson. But moving on a little bit, we know that this was such a revolutionary movie, A New Hope was. I mean, it revolutionized special effects. It revolutionized storytelling, I think, in and of itself. What do you think was the cultural impact of Star Wars? We'll start with you, Chase.
This is the biggest cultural impact I think that Star Wars has.
Yeah.
All right.
This movie.
Yeah. This movie, and bear with me on it, this movie made it cool to be a nerd. Like, you can like nerdy things and be cool. Like, Star Wars is a cool thing, but it's also considered kind of a nerdy thing, you know? But it kind of like, nowadays, it's kind of like, remember back when we were kids and you had to like hide the fact you played video games because you didn't want your friends to know? You know?
I just like friends that play video games with me.
Now? Yeah, it's like, no. Yeah, and then Xbox Live and all that stuff came out, and it's like, oh, you play with your friends. Now you can talk about it. It's like, Star Wars was kind of the introduction to that back in the 70s, where it's like, this is a sci-fi flick about stuff that doesn't happen. You know, it's not, you know, it has realistic parts to it, but the storytelling, the action, it can bring in somebody like my father who just likes action films and knows nothing about Star Wars. He would watch that movie just because of how good it is. It just brought so many different people from different phases of life all together, and they could all watch it, and nobody's being called a nerd for it. Like, we all enjoy it.
And that's what's great is if you talk to anybody who was born before Star Wars came out, they all have a story about when they went and saw Star Wars. Everybody has a story about when they went and saw Star Wars and the effect it had on them. It's crazy. It's crazy. We don't have movies like that anymore.
Well, and how fast too, you know, like literally over the weekend it came out. Like, it was a culture, it was a phenomenon. Like, it was worldwide. Everybody was just like, that's awesome. Like, that's it. Like,
yeah. And they played it in theaters. They played it in theaters for like a year straight.
Yeah.
They just kept going. It's just so crazy to think that we didn't have something like that until like the Titanic 20 years later.
I would commit medium to heavy arson to see the original trilogy in theaters again. Like, I cannot tell you how
non-specialized,
despecialized.
Come on,
a bit of both. Why not? Just do like a.
I don't like. I don't like the new stuff they added into it.
There's so many different ones. There's so many different changes.
I get it. It's cool that you can add Jabba in it now, but
he looks like dirt in it too. He's the worst effect. He looks like crap.
Yeah, he looks horrible.
I think that's George being a stubborn creative.
Absolutely.
That's literally what that is. George had such a big vision when he wrote this movie. And if I don't know, I know probably neither of you have read How Star Wars Conquered the Universe. But it is an amazing, amazing book by journalist Chris Taylor, who kind of goes deep into the origination of Star Wars and follows and covers everything up until the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. But he talks about how Lucas basically just wanted this to be Flash Gordon on crack. And wanted this to be such a big, like, so many different characters, different planets, but he didn't have the technology back then to be able to do this. And we'll get into the technology and how Star Wars revolutionized filmmaking in a second. But back then, there was no CGI. There was no, get into a computer and compose Jabba the Hutt into the shot. There was none of that. There was only, you could film miniatures and you could do matte paintings. And that was about the extent of special effects back then. And you can't, and if you wanted to have a creature, you had to build the creature costume to put them in the movie. You couldn't just say, here's Jar Jar Binks, a completely digital character. You couldn't do that back then. And I think that once George was able to get his hands on this technology and get his hands on all the CGI and the digital stuff, he was like, ooh, I wish I would have had this during whenever I was conceptualizing Star Wars. So he just straight up did it. And he just was like, I'm just going to put everything in that I didn't have back in 1976. I'm going to put it in here. And then he released it in 1997 and called it the Specialized Edition. And I just think that
And everyone went, all right, thanks, I guess.
Cool idea. It was a cool idea, but the execution of it, the technology just was not there yet.
It was the 90s, man. Everybody was ready for that. Everybody was excited. I can't blame them.
At least it's not as bad as Return of the Jedi, where they add that whole 3-minute song break in the... That drives me nuts.
You know what? I low-key kind of... I kind of
into my brain.
I can see it right now. As soon as we were talking about them adding effects, I remember the first time I watched it on TV.
Always play in the 2005 Star Wars Battlefront, just like on any Tatooine map. It was playing as you're just fighting, and you're like, "What's happening?"
Like, I like the song, but you don't need it. I'm glad she blew up in Jabba's palace.
Yeah. I think we kind of already went into it, but I didn't really get Jackson's take on it. So we'll start with you, Jackson. What was your first experience with this movie specifically? Not with Star Wars, but just with A New Hope. What was your first experience?
It is also my first experience with Star Wars.
Really?
My dad sat me down, was like, I'm going to learn you a thing. And I was like, I don't know, 5, 6. And I was just like, all right. I was like, cool, whatever. And he made me watch it. And the only scene I deliberately remember from that distinctive memory is the cantina scene when Obi-Wan chops off the dude's arm and it falls on the ground. I just remember being a kid and being like, I was like, he killed that guy. Like, he took his arm off. That guy's never going to have an arm again. That's crazy. And I was hooked instantly. I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is so cool. And I instantly was like, give me all of the toys. Give me everything. Give me everything I can do to get my hands on it. My dad was like, well, at this point, I don't think Revenge of the Sith was out yet. His point was that he made me watch everything because I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters.
Yeah, I had a weird starting experience with Star Wars. So I basically don't remember a point in my life where Star Wars wasn't a thing, but I don't come from a family where my parents weren't in love with Star Wars. They never showed me any of the Star Wars movies. So my first experience, I think, with just Star Wars in general was The Phantom Menace, maybe when I was 4 or 5. But my first experience with this movie, and it's kind of funny, around the Revenge of the Sith, like the marketing push for Revenge of the Sith, I had a cereal box. And on the back of this cereal box, there was various Star Wars collectible playing cards you could cut out and collect. And there was Anakin, young Obi-Wan, Padme, and then there was Luke Skywalker, Leia, Han Solo. I'm like, who were all these random characters that I've never seen before, and why do they look like they're so outdated? That was literally my introduction to the original
trilogy. Everyone's like, oh, you don't know?
Yeah. This was
you might be the only guy that has the card collection. You got introduced in the most unique way. You probably make some money off that.
I don't still have them. I wish I did. But I remember my first experience watching the movies was I went to Blockbuster.
Nice.
And I saw the cover of the movies of the original trilogy. I saw the covers. And based on the cover of the DVD was the one I wanted to pick out. And the one I picked out was The Empire Strikes Back, only because it had the Emperor on the front.
It's awesome.
And it's funny because the Emperor's not even in Empire Strikes Back.
Started with Empire?
I think so. Either Empire or Jedi, one of those two. But I have a
that's
weird...
why you like Last Jedi so much.
I have a very weird Star Wars introduction because I didn't have parents that sat me down and was like, okay, here's Star Wars. That I just didn't get that experience like a lot of people did, especially our age.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
What a world that you just kind of stumbled your way into.
Yeah, it's
no
weird.
one to guide you. You just kind of fell and were like, I'm here.
You use the Force. You just trust your instincts.
I trusted in the Force and found my way here.
I'm proud of you. You made it here.
Yeah. But let's kind of move on into the guts of this movie. there's so many iconic moments in this movie, and there are so many moments that just jump out to you as iconic Star Wars moments. What do you think is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of A New Hope? Chase, we'll start with you. What speaks to you and when it comes to A New Hope?
I mean, for me, and this is just talking because the first time I saw it, this is the one real memory I have when I was a kid was sitting on my aunt's couch and watching it. Was the most iconic scene to me was when Vader was introduced, which is the very beginning of the movie.
Same thing.
And the thing I like about it too is, and I threw this on a bunch of times too, what I was most surprised about, I forgot how good James Earl Jones is at playing Darth Vader, or as doing the voice.
Yeah.
Whenever he is talking to, he's talking to one of his lieutenants or whatever, and he's like, I want them alive. He gets really upset. And I'm like, and he does that, or whenever Han Solo comes out of nowhere, whenever, Luke's trying to blow up the Death Star, and Han Solo comes out of nowhere, and he's like, "What?" He's just so angry, so angry and upset all the time. And I'm like, "This is great." And that introduction of Darth Vader, that was the selling point for him. And he's picking up the guy in Captain Antilles. He's choking him by the throat and asking him about the plans while he's already snapped his neck. And I'm like, "That's amazing!" And just tosses him to the side like he's nothing.
It is it's deliberately so terrifying.
Yeah.
Even the costume, the big broad shoulders, and the cape, and he's coming out of the smoke. That is just the iconic WWE superhero.
First walks in and the smoke clears.
Yeah, it's so great.
And he's just towering over everybody. I don't know if that guy could have been just 6 foot, and they just picked up a bunch of 5'4" guys. But I wouldn't even known. He just came out there and he was.
Yeah, he was David Prowse, I think, was almost 7 feet tall. So
David Prowse, yeah.
And he was actually very upset that they didn't end up using his voice for Darth Vader, which is
kind of. Have you watched that documentary?
Sorry, what?
Have you watched a documentary on him?
Not on him.
There's a documentary about how
I've heard.
Star Wars kind of mistreated him.
Yeah.
I watched about halfway, almost. I'm almost done with it.
I met him when I was a kid at Disney World. They used to do Star Wars weekends at Disney World before they opened the theme parks. Yeah, I have an autograph of his. I followed his Twitter. He just died recently too.
He died of COVID.
Oh, was it of COVID? I didn't know it was of COVID. Rip my boy.
Yeah. Why would you go 8 episodes into this podcast and now announce that you've met David Prowse?
I don't know. I met David Prowse. I also met. I don't think I met Jake Lloyd, but I saw Jake Lloyd there. I saw his booth, and he was sitting there. And Billy D. Williams was there one time. And I've got pictures of
you should have bought him a beer or something.
I know.
I love Billy D.
Child when
8-year-old Jackson coming up.
I'll buy you a beer. Hey man, you want to play a card game of Savak real quick?
Can I buy you a Colt 45, please?
I guess since we're talking, day number, or I guess my first pod, I won't even save it. I did shots with the guy who plays Chewbacca now.
That's awesome.
I forgot what his name is. Yeah,
Eunice?
I did shots with, and talked about March Madness for about.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah,
wait.
And you're not going to believe me. This was not a fever dream.
Where was this at? Where did this happen?
I was working the March Madness tournament in Kansas City, which is basketball. I think it was.
Yeah, because Eunice Otomo is a basketball player.
Yeah, he's a Finnish basketball player. Finnish. And his favorite, and I have my sports podcast. His favorite player is Laurel Markkanen, who plays for the Bulls. So but first off, I was there because of March Madness. I was working the tournament, and that same weekend was Comic-Con.
That's crazy.
And we got to stay in this hotel for free, and I met Christopher Sabat, who is the voice of Vegeta. I actually got pictures with him.
Wow.
The Red Power Ranger, Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2, and then the manager of who voices Yoda in the Clone Wars and stuff. He was there.
Tom Kane? You met Tom Kane?
Yeah. And he was the one that actually, he's the one that I was sitting next to, and I was like, I think that guy, that's Arthur Morgan there. And he's like, yeah, you want to hear something else? That's Chewbacca right there. Because I've never seen him without his suit. And I was like, oh my God. Like, he had to calm me down. He was like, you got to calm down. And he's like, just wait a second. He was like, I'll let you know when you can talk to him. And then a couple drinks later, I ended up talking to him and buying him shots. And I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning.
That is insane, dude.
I know.
I'm surprised you didn't get a picture with him.
I got a picture with Christopher Sabat, but for them, it was kind of weird because I wanted to record the guy who plays Arthur Morgan. I had him do he did a couple lines for me from the game. And they wouldn't let me record him because something about they didn't want copyright problems. So I didn't want to bother anybody too. And there's 7 celebrities all sitting around me. I'm some kid from, random town in Missouri. I was
Small town Missouri.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not pushing my luck. I'm not going to be that guy.
That's awesome, dude.
That is awesome.
I couldn't even imagine.
Oh, it was great. It was incredible. But I'm sorry, we're going off topic again. We're going off
no,
topic.
No, it's okay. People want to hear this stuff.
Yeah,
he was great though. We talked basketball for about 2-3 hours, and I talked to him more than I talked to anybody. Christopher Sabat's the only one I got photos with though.
Cool.
I'm Chewbacca shot.
Jackson, what are some of your favorite moments in A New Hope?
It's definitely also the Vader walk-in scene. I do love the entire Mos Eisley section, from them standing on the cliff top overlooking it to everything being inside Tatooine, inside Mos Eisley. Love all of that. I loved that natural world building that it was. Yeah. Trying to think what else. It's the whole movie, dude. Favorite moments, also the Vader Kenobi fight, just because it's the first lightsaber fight, and it's definitely the first you see these two characters that you didn't necessarily knew each other, they're kind of I suspect it, and then they meet and you're like, oh no.
It's great because that moment doesn't have depth until you experience the rest of the saga.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can only imagine the first time watching that and being, oh, they know each other. Oh, that's not good. That's not good.
Yeah. I just think that the moment where Luke comes out of his little hut and goes onto the dunes of Tatooine and stands there staring into the sunset, yearning for adventure, and you hear the John Williams music of the Force theme / binary sunset / whatever you want to call it. That is a moment in Star Wars where every time I watch it, I get a little I just feel my eyes get a little bit watery
in your chest. It's like someone giving you a hug.
Because you think about it, and you can't help but compare yourself to Luke in that moment, and all of your aspirations and dreams and yearning for them, but they're so far away. And you can only just sit there and
there's 2 of them, and they're for some reason giant stars.
there's 2 of them. Yeah, but I think that is one of the moments that speak to me so, just in Star Wars in general, speak to me so much. And again, you guys already covered Vader's introduction. I mean, that's just the most iconic villain. I think in cinema history, Vader is in the top 2 or 3 iconic villains.
I completely agree. Another one for me is definitely the trench scene when Luke's getting ready to shoot his bombs in, and all of a sudden you hear Obi-Wan's voice, and it's just you're like, oh, he's still with him. It's a very heartwarming and just the Force. That's what that does. It makes dead people, I think, talk to you.
It almost makes you think to yourself that, man, I should just trust in the Force more. I'm
gonna just do that when I'm driving. Just close my eyes.
The Force, take the wheel.
Be like, I got it.
The Force will take the wheel and take me where I need to be.
No, but I just mean from a more theological aspect, if you just more often just told yourself to trust in the Force and trust in the way of doing things, that's a life motto right there. It's so cool.
It's just it's the way it is. That's kind of what it is. Yeah. It's Go with the flow.
Yeah.
Go with the force.
Yeah, it's great. Again, another. It's kind of funny, but in the newest, the edition that's on Disney Plus for those of you keeping score at home. Our first introduction to Obi-Wan is he comes out.
What is that?
What is that? Scream.
He's
Whoa!
He's just flopping his arms
that
around.
wasn't in the original movie.
I like how
that made me die laughing.
He's trying to do a crate dragon, and now that we've seen a crate dragon in the Mandalorian system, it sounds nothing like that. Yeah, it sounds nothing like a crate dragon.
Oh my god!
It's always. I love diving into the universe and everything, but every time I see that, I just see a elderly man in a robe flopping his arms around screaming, and it's funny.
It works.
And it works.
It's just the type of scream they use is so like a drunk NASCAR fan. In that scene where we are introduced to Obi-Wan with the NASCAR scream, we get the first ever "Hello there." When he takes down his hood.
Pick that up.
Tell me that isn't the best introduction to Obi-Wan you've ever seen.
That's great. Do you think they knew that was going to be like his tagline going into like episode 3?
I think episode 3.
You think it's just like
they were like, oh, he said hello there in the original Star Wars, so he must say it in this one, right?
That's cool though. I tied that together. I was like, all right, let's go. I like that.
It's a great way to tie in. Because, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they were watching the prequels, they were looking for ways to connect it to the original trilogy. And I think something as simple as the "Hello there" line from Kenobi, I mean, it's like a cultural phenomenon.
And Mr. Sassy Obi-Wan Kenobi over here giving us quippy one-liners, like...
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about this, and this is... Me and Chase were talking earlier about some lines in this movie that we don't remember ever even being there until we watched it just recently. Whenever Obi-Wan and Luke are in the cantina on Tatooine, and after Obi-Wan has this whole thing where he cuts off the guy's arm and they're kind of settling down, Obi-Wan walks away from Chewbacca and he says, "Chewbacca here is the first mate on a ship that might suit us." That's insinuating that Obi-Wan knows Chewbacca and knows the Millennium Falcon. But here's the thing. Whenever they sit down with Han Solo asks, "Haven't you heard of the Millennium Falcon?" And Obi-Wan says, "No, should I have?" What's the deal there? Does Obi-Wan know about the Millennium Falcon or not?
I think it's more...
Shouldn't Obi-Wan... Oh, you can go. You go.
I think it's more Chewbacca explained to Obi-Wan, like, yeah, I've got this cool little cargo ship. I'm the first mate of it. Like, it'll be real nice. It'll be easy, simple, easy breeze. Like, we'll get you to where you going? Alderaan? Yeah, we can do that. That's simple. It's easy. And Obi-Wan's like, yeah. Like, oh, yeah. Hey, this big bear dude, like, knows where, yeah, he can help us out. It's going to be great. It's going to be a smooth ride. And then they meet Han Solo, and he's like,
yeah.
It's a dangerous place where you're going. And everyone's like, okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Chase?
Also, shouldn't Obi-Wan know R2-D2? Like, shouldn't that be like a...
That's the thing. I think that's a little bit
Maybe
of a
he just
George
doesn't
thing.
care.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a George thing where he's like, "Ooh, we can sneak R2 in the prequels," but it's been a while. It's been a while.
Like, and they even they covered all their tracks with R2 and 3PO when they're like, "Yeah, erase the droid's memories at the end of episode 3." But it's like, did Obi-Wan get his memory erased? Like he doesn't remember this little blue droid that saved them.
I wouldn't forget an iconic Republic droid after only 16 years.
And it's the droid telling you the message. He's telling you what's up.
I also wouldn't forget my apprentice's droid that he took into battle with us for the last, 4 years and then didn't see it for 18. I think the line Obi-Wan says about never owning a droid, I kind of take it as a joke. Like Obi-Wan's just screwing with Luke. He's like, man, I've never owned one.
Or also it could also be taken as Obi-Wan has gone through so much stuff in his life, and even Kenobi could even get into this, is he's like in between the years of him parting from Vader, maybe he's suppressed every memory he's had with Anakin. Maybe he's tried so hard to keep that part of his life separate from where he is now. And I really hope they do get into this with Kenobi.
That breaks my heart.
That
makes sense too, because whenever Luke calls him Obi-Wan, like he says Obi-Wan, like confused, and then he's like Obi-Wan. Yeah, he's like, I haven't heard that in a long time. It's like,
that's maybe one of my
favorite, that makes a lot of sense. I would probably forget a droid at that point. Yeah, if I've been living on Tatooine for that long.
If you're actively trying to suppress your memories of your prime, I think that's a plausible thing that can happen. You do forget things like droids and stuff like that. But I think it's just such a cool detail. If they do touch on it in Kenobi, I think that could be so cool.
I was reading. Go
ahead.
In certain point of view, I read the Obi-Wan chapter, and it's written by Claudia Gray too, which is fun. But it's Master and Apprentice, and it's when Luke. It's like a downtime when essentially like it's the night before they go to Mos Eisley and they're just chilling, and Luke has figured out that Owen and Beru are dead, and Obi-Wan has a conversation with Qui-Gon in like Qui-Gon's ghost, like in the Sandcrawler. They're like chilling in the Sandcrawler. He's like, I think he's like waiting for Luke to get back, and he's like talking to Qui-Gon, and the whole time he's just like. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, he holds so much guilt to himself. And in the chapter, Qui-Gon's like, you were thrown into this. Like and Obi-Wan's,
he didn't want to be
he's like, you had no control. And Obi-Wan's like, I understand that. And he's like, I understand that everybody had a part to play. He's like, I just feel guilty about mine. And Qui-Gon's like, yeah, that's fair. Like, I don't blame you. Yeah, that's fair. Like, you shouldn't, but like, yeah, that's fair. And I love, like, that Qui-Gon, like, or not Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan still just, he blames so much of himself, like, just losing so close of people to him. And even, like, with he's lost everybody. He's lost everybody in his life, and he holds so much guilt and betrayal and within himself for that.
Yeah.
I mean, he even talks to, when he's talking to Luke and he's telling him about, like, his father and Darth Vader and stuff, like, you can even kind of get, like, that little, like, sniff of, he feels like he's partial blame.
Like it hurts for him to say it.
Yeah.
Like, it's too much. Yeah.
And that's crazy, too, that they knew back then. They're talking about Jedi Knights and, even Grand Moff Tarkin, whenever they mention Obi-Wan, he's just kind of like, oh, you're the last of those sorcerers. Like, he even like says that Darth Vader was a Jedi Knight.
Religion, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, like, this is amazing. You guys set the foundation from film number one.
Well, it's so funny, too, that Alec Guinness thought they were crap. He hated them. He hated working on them. He thought it was going to be stupid. I just think it's so funny. He's, like, one of the best regarded characters.
Yeah, and it's so great how whenever Obi-Wan does tell, like, the story of Luke's father to him, if you're back watching this when it first comes out, it gives Obi-Wan kind of a mysterious past of, like, oh, you were best friends with my father and he just died. He was a spice pilot or something like that. It already comes off as kind of sketchy. I think that's what's great about Obi-Wan is he knows when to say the right thing at the right time.
And that also kind of sets up that what they kind of wanted The Empire Strike Back, like the last line to be, which was, Obi-Wan killed your father instead of I am your father. So it kind of leaves both of those doors unclosed. So like George Lucas got to pick which one he picked, and I think he picked the right one because I don't know what they would have done.
Yeah.
But that was great. I loved it. And how he says Darth Vader killed your father, like metaphorically,
that's true.
That's what happened.
He was telling the truth.
Yes, and I'm like, that's great. I love it.
Yeah. And then, we get to the end of the movie, we get the death of Kenobi. So I just think
it's so,
sorry, what, Jackson?
It's so redeeming. It's such a fulfilling moment because Obi-Wan's just finally at peace and he deserves it. That's all he needs. That's all he wants.
Yeah, he looks over at Luke. He knows. Yeah.
I think that that whole moment with Kenobi, he knows that it is his time and that this is where it's time for Luke to take over.
The chapter and point of view that it also kind of talks about that like since Qui-Gon's a ghost, he can't see time linearly anymore, so he knew that Obi-Wan was dying soon. So in the chapter it talks about how like Obi-Wan's like, when are we going to have a conversation again? Qui-Gon's like, oh, we'll be together real soon. Like, don't you worry. Like, you'll be okay. And in it talks about how Qui-Gon's like, he's like, Obi-Wan deserved this. Like, he doesn't know yet, but he's like, once the time will come, he will. He'll understand that, like, he fulfilled his mission. He did what he could. And he did it tremendously and beautifully. And that's so redeeming in that final scene where he looks over and he sees Luke and Leia together. And he's like, it's like perfect. He's like,
yeah. He just looks over and gives up. I mean, he just holds up the lightsaber.
20 years of protecting that little rat. I'm glad I figured that one out.
And it says a lot about how the view of the Jedi has evolved by the time we get to the original trilogy. Because I just think that Obi-Wan is not the Jedi in A New Hope that he was in Revenge of the Sith and prior. He's basically a different man at this point. And I think that it's just his death is his way of saying, okay, what I knew and what I was trained on is the old way of doing things. This whole suppressing your emotions and suppressing attachment and living to serve a body of government is a flaw. And I mean, me and Jackson have talked about this a lot, how the Jedi were not always like this. I mean, you see that in the High Republic. And I just think that the evolution of the Jedi and the way of thinking with the Jedi, especially when we get to Yoda and The Empire Strikes Back, it's much more of a philosophical thinking of trusting in the Force and trusting. It becomes
an actual religion.
Yeah, and trusting compared in the actions of
the diplomat stuff they were doing in the prequel series time, you know?
Yeah, and trusting in the actions of your fellow beings and just it has a lot to do with trust. And I think that is an important theme. We're going to do a lot of the themes we notice in this movie later, but that is a really important theme in this movie, is trusting your destiny and allowing yourself to just bloom and become who you are. Because that's kind of the start of Luke's character here, is that's where he is. He's starting to envelop what he becomes in the, Return of the Jedi and moving forward. So I think that's really, that was a really deep explanation for Obi-Wan's death. But yeah,
that was beautiful.
Thank you. But
I couldn't agree more either, though. And I love Alex Guinness's performance too.
Oh my God. Yeah,
he wasn't a fan.
And
he's just that he played a perfect old wise hermit,
and he's so Shakespearean with it.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's like if I saw that guy like outside of his grocery store, I'd listen to every single word he had to tell me.
Yeah,
he just tell me. He's just sitting there. Tell me everything you got to tell me.
Even if you do want, $3 for a McDonald's chicken sandwich.
Sure. I throw you in a medium fry too.
Yeah, you know what? Throw in a large Coke. Throw $1 anyway.
Get him a McFlurry, damn.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, the impact of Kenobi in this entire movie, and also just being such a he's only in the movie for like maybe 20 minutes, and he's so iconic. He's almost as iconic as Vader.
He's arguably like sorry for the modernized term, but like he's the clutchest character. I mean, he shuts down the tractor beam and then delays Darth Vader and confuses him after he disappears in thin air, to the point where everybody can get away when they are on the a star station that can blow up planets.
Yeah.
Like he's the reason they got away. He's also the reason he shut down the tractor beam, and he set up everything that goes on. He's the clutchest person, and he's the one that got everybody there. You know, who knows what would have happened to the rebellion if all those little, you know, snidbits didn't happen.
There's so many pieces that had to come together in order to ensure the survival of the rebellion. And I think that's what makes so great that Obi-Wan. Yeah, Obi-Wan played such an instrumental part in the survival of the rebellion, which I think was great. What do you think, Jackson?
Initially I'm thinking about the tractor beam sound when he's turning into the boom. You know, I think the big thing with Obi-Wan in this is that everyone just kind of expects him to just show up and like save the day. And the decisions Obi-Wan makes instead to actually, he knows what's important. He knows what's actually important. He knows that it's this random kid, this pilot, and this princess. He's like, this is where this needs to be focused, whereas everyone kind of expects Obi-Wan to be like the savior and whatnot. And I think that's kind of an interesting take on where that character could go, because the whole time in the movie you're kind of expecting him to be this whole thing, and instead he just outwits him, and that's classic Obi-Wan. We knew that, but he throws him off, and that's kind of how I do it.
We do end up seeing that eventually with Luke in The Last Jedi, where, you know, when Rey and Chewbacca come and he's like, what do you expect me to do? Just whip out my laser sword and take on the entire First Order on my own? That's not how it works. So I think that's really interesting. And I think that the role that Kenobi plays and just like how the success the rebellion has in this movie is awesome.
I always compare Obi-Wan Kenobi as like a good teacher, you know, like, there's so many teachers in high school and elementary school and middle school. You get them and, you know, they'll just give the answer to you right away, and you don't learn anything. You don't. They just give you the answer, and it's like you never had to work for it. I mean, that's what you want. You know, that's what Luke and all of them want. They want Obi-Wan just to come in and mow down everybody, you know, and be the savior. But Obi-Wan knows it's better for everything. It's better for the rebellion, and it's better for personal character development if he let him fail sometimes. Let Luke fail sometimes. Put him in situations where it's testing their wit. And that I always compare him to a teacher, because good teachers would be like, do you think that's the answer? And also will explain to you sometimes that the answer is two different. It can be two different situations.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of like different perspectives, and there's no one way of doing things, and it's just important to know that there isn't just one way of doing things, and the answer is what you think is best for yourself.
He is probably the best person to make sure that experiences is what teaches you, is what gives you the answer. And I completely agree with that, is that he just, you know, he guides you to find the experiences that you need for your answer.
And I think that says a lot about, you know, just Obi-Wan as a character. And, you know, later on, whenever Luke does eventually find out that Vader is his father, Luke confronts his Force ghost and is like, Ben, why didn't you tell me? Like, you lied to me. He's like, no, I told the truth from a certain point of view. And like, it's genius. That is such a Jedi thing.
Yeah.
But kind of moving on from the whole Kenobi thing, this movie is so iconic with the different just quotes and lines throughout the entire movie. This is probably one of the most quoted Star Wars movies of all time. We'll start with you, Chase. What are some of your favorite quotes throughout this movie?
Well, other than like the Obi-Wan screech whenever he's first introduced, that one's my personal favorite, but I can't like
the NASCAR scream.
I mean, it's kind of a funny quote, but whenever Uncle Owen picks up C-3PO and like, or when they're going to buy the droids or whatever, and he's asking if he speaks Bocce, and C-3PO's going into this long explanation. He's like, yeah, shut up, we'll take this one. And C-3PO says, shutting up now. Or whenever they're in the trash the trash compactor, and they're celebrating because they like at the buzzer stopped it, and C-3PO just hears him screaming. He's like, they're dying, R2, they're dying. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love that whole trash compactor sequence.
Oh, it's great.
Because you immediately know the dynamic between all of these characters, even though they just met each other 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah. And it like builds their relationship up so well too. For just meeting each other.
I'm a big fan of I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Yes.
When he chokes out General Tag, and such a cool moment to show off like how strong the Force can be and like what it can do and whatnot. And Vader being all sassy and, you know, making a quip and just choking someone out. Oh, I loved that. I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah. I think that was one of the ones I had written down because that is just Vader. Like, this guy is just like completely, this ancient religion isn't, you know, you can't save the entire empire despite using this stupid little religion.
Yeah.
And then he just uses the Force.
He's like, I could literally snap your neck. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. This ancient religion. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Chase, you were talking about this earlier, how like why doesn't Kenobi just go around proving the Force works by just making stuff float? Like
knocking over brooms or something when nobody's around. Like I'd be scaring Han Solo all the time. Like his little keychains and stuff he has, I'd be knocking them over with the Force or picking them up. Like heck yeah, I'd be doing that.
Yeah,
you don't believe in it.
And speaking of the whole Uncle Owen thing, I'd love how this got made fun of so much, but I was going to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
Classic whiny Luke, yeah.
It's just like,
or what's the scene when they're in the Death Star and Han's like, well, now I don't want to go, and Luke, wait a minute, you just said you wanted to go, but now you don't want to leave. Like, it's so quick, and it's just like this like blurred nothingness.
Yeah, and I also think that while we're talking about quotes, probably just that means so much throughout the entire saga is "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope."
Oh yeah, a classic.
Because I mean, that is just the delivery from Carrie Fisher on like the desperation of the rebellion in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so great, and it like that small line speaks volumes.
I think another influential, or not influential, but more just memorable and classic line is "These are not the droids we're looking for."
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Some classics. I think a cool one for me is "When I left you, I was nothing but a novice, but now I am the master," and it instantly gives you that like, oh, like these two have that like that deep history. You know, it's more, you know, Obi-Wan kind of just mentions off that, oh yeah, Darth Vader killed your father, but he also killed all of the Jedi. So it kind of sounds like it's, you know, Obi-Wan's like, yeah, I knew Darth Vader. I wasn't as close, you know, I wasn't his master. And then, it, you know, in the end, when he and Vader are fighting and you're like, oh, like Obi-Wan was definitely like a lot more connected to this person.
Yeah. And it just, it kind of clues you in to this is like the first time that we're clued into their past before the prequels even happened or anything like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think it's just great that that the audience in that moment knows that there is an emotional past there that we don't necessarily know about yet.
And it's just so cool how much background you're already given in the first movie. You know, there's so much more and so much details that are refined out of it. But like initially in the first movie alone, you can pretty much figure out that they were close, you know.
It's so crazy how you're so bombarded with information in this movie. And it's not jarring, and it's not overwhelming.
No, it's paced so wonderfully.
I was in shock whenever they make the quote about like the Clone Wars and stuff. I'm like, they mentioned that in the first movie?
Yeah,
I was like, goodness gracious. Like that's...
Like he knew from the beginning, yeah.
That's
they
insane.
set up so much just in this one movie.
It's like if I was in the movie theater watching that for the first time, didn't know anything about Star Wars, I'd be like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. I was talking about the hope line earlier, and I think that is one of the really big. I mean, the movie is called A New Hope, but that is one of the really big themes in this movie is hope, and not to give up that hope. Chase, what do you think about the entire theme of hope in this movie and what it means to you?
It's hope and like having trust in like your own ability. It's just, it's kind of like that's the way it is type of thing, like trust your gut. Go with, like, Luke could have easily had all the help he needed whenever he was trying to blow up the Death Star with the little machine that can track everything. But he trusted his gut. He trusted it. He also, could have made a lot of stupid decisions throughout, like running at Darth Vader after Kenobi gets mowed down. But he has that trust and that hope that it's for something bigger. That's the always big thing is like, whatever they are doing in that certain point in time, it's hope for a better tomorrow. It's, stuff's bad right now. Like the Empire's using everything to kind of like, they got their foot on your throat. But you got to have that hope, and hope will conquer anything, even an Empire.
Yeah, and it's great that you're talking about that because the whole Luke could have straight up saw Vader kill Kenobi and then just go after Vader.
Yeah.
But we hear Kenobi knows that this isn't the time for that. He says to Luke in his head, he's like, "Run, Luke, run. This isn't the time." And I think that's just so important that you just have to stay calm and collected and just wait for the bigger picture to come to you. There is a time and a place for everything, and that wasn't it. So I think that's really cool. Jackson, what kind of stands out to you when it comes to, themes of hope or any other themes you kind of picked up in this movie?
This is a theme that plays like it's really the Star Wars theme, and it's actually, I think, the bigger theme of the sequel trilogy, but it also still fits in this movie is that you're allowed to choose your destiny. You're allowed to be the person that you want to be. No one else is going to tell you no about that. I mean, people will tell you no, but no one has that power to change that. And that's kind of, the classic binary sons when Luke's staring off and he's wanting this, bigger, better life. And in the moment he thinks that's to join the academy and, be this helping hand in the Empire. And, his life is drastically changed of his plans, but he still became the fullest person that he wanted to be. And that's what Luke wanted to be. He wanted to be a good and important person, and he did. He successfully achieved that, and I think this movie definitely it kind of talks about how your destiny is whatever you can make of it. It's whatever you want to do and can build from that.
And it also has a lot to do with the opportunities that are presented to you and what you choose to do with those opportunities. I mean, we see Luke, he's so naive in the beginning because he has all these dreams of becoming an Imperial pilot and going to the Imperial Academy. But then he kind of realizes that, oh, wait, the Empire is doing some really bad things out there. I don't know if I want to do this. And Kenobi even drives that point home. And he is kind of at this crossroads of, okay, I can stay here with my friends and help my aunt and uncle with the harvest, or I can go with this Ben Kenobi old wizard dude and go to Alderaan and help him, with whatever he's doing,
princess.
And train to save a princess and train to become a Jedi. And then he quickly realizes, when the Empire comes and basically burns down his entire house, he's like, wait, there's something a lot bigger at stake here. This isn't just I want to be able to see my friends. This is, oh my God, the galaxy is in turmoil right now. I mean, my entire house just got blown up.
It's time to do something.
It's time to do something about it. And I think that's so important because even in real life, I just think that a lot of people have trouble making big decisions like big life altering decisions for the better. And I think that this kind of shows us that you need to, I just think, look at different opportunities and choose what is best for you. Because a lot of people to see opportunities are like, oh, but no, that'd be too much of a change for me. I wouldn't be able to do that. And I think that this movie is really good at just embracing change and embracing.
And even if you make the wrong decision, like you can learn from it. Like in contrast, like Anakin did the opposite. Anakin was on the good side and going for a better universe and everything, and he threw it away because he really cared about Padme, and he had this strong attachment and wanted to keep her around forever because he's lost so much in his life. And in the end, he still comes back around and saves his son at the end of Return of the Jedi. And he fulfilled his destiny. Like, even though he made the wrong decision going with Palpatine and setting up the reign of dominance of the Empire, it still all worked out because he learned from that decision. And that's a big thing too, is like, trust your choice, and if you make the wrong decision, you can always go back on it. You can always become a better person.
And failure is so important to go through, because even in The Last Jedi, we hear Yoda talk about with Luke how important failure is, and how failure is the burden of all masters. Like, there's no getting around it. Like, that is how you grow as a person, is failing at things. I think that's a really great lesson that we see in every Star Wars movie.
Love that quote.
Yeah, and then you talk about Anakin versus Luke and like the difference in their decisions. I think that where Anakin failed is where Luke was able to succeed. I think Luke was able to look at the bigger picture and look at what is the right thing to do. And I don't think Anakin had the emotional capacity to be able to do that.
I think too, Anakin was definitely surrounded in an atmosphere most of his life that was pretty dark, pretty aggressive, whereas Luke is someone who he grew up with a loving family, and he had friends, and he may have been poor, but his when the opportunities came and he had to make the important decisions, he was definitely able to look back on a life of good people, and whereas with Anakin, he lived in a life of bad with good aspects, and that's what made him selfish about those aspects, is he just wanted to protect everything he had good because everything else wasn't.
Yeah, and I think even Anakin coming up as a slave, like he was brought into this world, and the world's kind of slapped him in the face. And I think he thought that it was his responsibility to get back at the world.
And a lot of people pressured Anakin because they assumed that because he was now in a better spot and he was this big, cool Jedi Knight, is that he would be able to be like, oh, well, I know not to be like that, to be evil and whatnot. But instead, it made him angry, especially with how old he was,
Yeah, and I think even Owen and Beru see the parallels between Anakin and Luke. I mean, Beru even says he has too much of his father in him, and Owen says, "Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of." Like, that is such a genius line that at the time it doesn't mean much, but once you see the rest of the saga, you're like, "Wow, that's a big statement."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Yeah, those are that was great. I love all of the themes in Star Wars, and there's so much more we can get into once we get into the other movies too. But I think one of the most iconic characters in Star Wars, like even ahead of people like Vader and all those big characters, I think one of the most culturally impactful characters we've ever seen is Leia.
Absolutely.
And her impact on not even just Star Wars, but her impact on cinema. What do you think Leia means to you, Chase?
I wish I could, use the cliche like she walked so all the other, female protagonists can run, but that's just not true, because she ran, and she's ran faster than, most even and modern protagonists. Yeah, and she's still running. Like, she just comes out guns blazing. She's going toe to toe in like an interrogation against Darth Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin. She's cutting jokes at Vader and cutting jokes at Grand Moff Tarkin, and she was just always such like a hardened character from the very beginning, and it was also believable too. And I think that goes to Carrie Fisher, who's an amazing actress. I mean, she absolutely killed this role, and she was built for this role. But one of my favorite scenes with Princess Leia is whenever they just break her out of the cell block and they have nowhere to go. C-3PO is like, hey, you guys blew up the only way that you had in and out. And she's like, okay, what are we just going to stand here? And she grabs the gun and starts mowing down people and then shoots the garbage chute and jumps in there. It's like, this is a princess, but it's more than that. She's a leader, and she shows that in so many different scenes. And on top of it, her and Han, spitting back and forth. Han is this big, brash, kind of arrogant character, and she just holds her own against him and just shuts him down a lot of times too. And it's Princess Leia as a character, especially in this movie, I think this movie really brings out a lot of good in that character. She ran so everybody else could run in terms of female protagonists. In terms of regular protagonists too, she was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it's great how our first, not our first introduction to her, but Luke's first introduction to her when he comes in trying to save her from the sail block.
She makes fun of him.
Immediately, she just goes, she's not like, oh, yes, my hero, thank you so much. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? She immediately knows.
Ready.
What are we doing?
Instantly was like, oh, I could beat this guy up.
She's like, we got a little kid saving me? What's going on?
And it's, yeah, right. It's great because, he knows, Luke knows that he's there to save her, but she thinks that he's just another stormtrooper there to do whatever. Yeah. She immediately just is ready to make fun of her enemy.
The terminating stormtrooper is going to be 5'5".
Yeah, I just think it's great that how she basically knows she's going to be able to get out of this situation, whether she has Luke and his team and friends help or not. I think that's really great. How do you think Leia compares to a lot of the other female characters of the time? Because we have, characters, like Sigourney Weaver from Alien, and we have kind of an uproaring of these great feminist characters. How do you think this Leia compares to a lot of the different female roles of this time?
I mean, I love Sigourney. She is absolutely amazing. Ripley is amazing as a character. I love the whole Alien franchise. But there's just something different, and I think it's just better writing on top of the fact that Carrie Fisher's saga. It's amazing to think that Star Wars seems more realistic than Alien, which gives... I think it gives Princess Leia a bigger push for the better, female protagonist. But it just, all the writing around it, the jokes, the interrogation sequence, all that stuff just really pushes home that it's such a believable character from Princess Leia. Sigourney, it's just kind of more... about the shock factor and scary, Alien's absolutely terrifying.
I think too what has to do with it is that Carrie Fisher like you said, the writing as well, especially just with Leia as the character, is how young she was, is how instantly capable and natural and original. It wasn't this damsel in distress. And I think it's funny is a lot of Leia's troubles follow very modern, stereotypes with women on, being that damsel in distress and just helpless and waiting for the person. And like Braydon said, it was, she could get out of this place if she wanted to. She really could have done it on her own. She probably just needed someone to open the door. She didn't need some farm boy and this smuggler and this giant, the walking carpet.
So I get this walking carpet out of my way.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think the big thing with it is that it's how big of a strong and natural and independent character, especially for that time, and how young she was, being 18, 19 years old and, is running diplomat missions and, is being captured by Darth Vader and the Empire. And
I love the sass too. The sass is it's just great.
Classic
because
Skywalker sass.
And she is she has a reason to have all this sass because she's a princess and she's getting saved by some dude that's been working on a farm and some low-class smuggler and a Wookiee. That's who she's getting saved by. So just that natural sass that she has, and that, she honestly doubts him because she has done so much more in her lifetime up to that point than those people have in their entire lives.
Yeah, that's true. I just love the scene with Tarkin and Vader, and they're about to blow up Alderaan, and immediately she's like, "Oh, Tarkin, I thought I smelled your foul stench." It's like she just, nothing phases her, and it's so great. And I don't know, you guys haven't read How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, but it talks about how in that scene Leia kind of has like a British accent, and it's like really only at the beginning of the movie in this scene, and that's really the only time you ever hear it. And that's because Carrie Fisher was kind of trained in acting whenever she was living over in the UK and in London, and like the accent kind of just like comes through in her performance sometimes in this movie, but it was kind of written off and adjusted as Leia was doing that because she was mocking Tarkin's accent.
I love that.
I just think that's so great to think about that when you're watching that scene.
Doesn't she also, like, he talks about terminating her or something, and she's like, well, I'm guessing you don't have the guts, that you're not going to be the one being the executioner. Like,
yeah,
like she's
just so ruthless and just ready
up against the biggest like people in the in the entire galaxy.
Yeah,
I love it.
I just think there's just so much to love about Leia, and her cultural effect that the character has had for so many years, especially for little girls and women everywhere. It's just crazy that she's still prominent today, 40 however many years later. But yeah, kind of moving on. This movie takes place pretty far after the fall of the Republic, and the Jedi are kind of a legend here and kind of mythical, I want to say. What do you think? How do you think the Jedi and like the whole perception of the Jedi has evolved from the Republic days to now? Chase, we'll have you go.
I mean, I would compare it as kind of like think about putting Mace Windu in this film. Like, think about it being Mace Windu instead of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, he would be he'd be telling everybody what to do. Be telling them word for word what to do.
Yeah, he just
telling people
directing.
Yeah, like, don't do this, don't do that. And once it gets to and I think it's because of all the failures of the Jedi religion that happened during the Republic days. I feel like Obi-Wan and even like Yoda, whenever he comes along later in the movies, they kind of learn and adapt. They change their teaching style to, instead of, hey, this is how you do it, and this is what's good. It's good against evil. It's, bad against good. Now it's, you need to learn from your mistakes and make your own destiny, like we've talked about. And that's kind of the Jedi way now, is whatever your destiny is you're going to go through it no matter what. Like, we tried to keep Anakin from going to the dark side for, so many years, and it just didn't work, because if anything, it pushed him farther towards it. And,
exactly
stuff like in the Clone Wars too, like they falsely accuse Ahsoka. Well, I didn't mean to. Am I? You haven't watched it yet, have you, Braydon?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, no, I know about it. I know about it. Yeah,
okay.
I watched that arc.
Yeah.
I watched that
I was like, damn, I can't be saying that. But
no, it's okay. As long as it's not from the last season, because I don't know anything about the last season.
No, but it's just kind of like the Jedis have adapted to, now it's a go with the flow type thing instead of, right and wrong. And I like that so much more, because you learn from failures.
Well, I think that's also too kind of the big thing with Luke's journey and overall, like leading up, especially to Last Jedi, is that the Jedi constantly adapted to new things, but their downfall was that they didn't necessarily understand that. They did it, but they didn't fully follow through with it, because their whole, at least with Obi-Wan and Yoda, like their whole mission is to restore the Jedi Order with Luke. And Luke does that, but Luke did it in the ways of when he finally was able to start that rebuild, he he discovered the kind of hypocrisy of the Jedi Order and how kind of broken and shattered it was. And that's what leads him astray. And that's what breaks him away, especially his disconnect of the Force, is that he almost feels like he's so betrayed. And like, he was like, how could this be how it was? How could this be when Obi-Wan was around? You know, it was, you know, I was trained in this, you know, this different and honest and purest way of, you know, finding my path to the Force, and you're wanting me to go back to when it wasn't working that well, when it wasn't working correctly. So yeah, I agree that they're able to adapt, and that they did adapt, but they didn't fully understand what that meant and what that could be. And I think the person who figured that out was Rey.
Yeah,
and kind of finding that middle.
I think it's so crazy how the state of the galaxy right now all falls in the Jedi's hands, because the failure of the Jedi is the reason why we have Vader, and the reason why the Empire is even existing right now is because, you know, forbidding all of this emotional attachment and forbidding like even being able to feel anything and just being the servant of the Republic.
Well, and that's
kind of dangerous.
The blind ignorance that the Jedi hold of thinking that, you know, oh, we defeated the Sith, there's nothing that could stop us. And it's literally, it was them that stopped them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great. And yeah, it's just interesting to think about how the perspective of the Jedi is so drastically different in every trilogy. Like the prequel trilogy, the idea of the Jedi is so much different than what we see in the sequel trilogy and the original trilogy. So I think that's kind of cool. But you know, we were kind of talking about Leia earlier. I think one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time is Han Solo. And I think everybody here can agree that Han Solo is one of the best Star Wars characters. What do you think it is about, Chase? What do you think it is about Han that connects to you so much?
He just seems like kind of like how the Mandalorian, the Mandalorian, how he's just kind of like he's just there, you know. He doesn't care about the Jedis and the Sith. Like they don't care. They are there to do one thing. It's to make money. Like he just wants to make money and be able to eat and survive. That's all he's trying to do.
He's got debts to pay.
Yeah, he's got debts to pay. And like he just reminds me of like a guy that keeps gambling. You know, he keeps getting more and more in debt, and it's just kind of like, you know, you can relate them to like people, like some of your close. I don't know about your guys' friends, but I got a lot of friends where I'm like, that guy's like Han Solo. Like you need to like. There's some points where it's like, okay,
he can talk you out of a gunfight and still lose all your money. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you need to like shut up this time. But he keeps going, and sometimes even whenever you think this guy's about to get, you know, the crap beat out of him, he can talk his way out of a situation. He's so smooth, and he's got that arrogance with him. I just thought Harrison Ford was built for that role, and that is a perfect representation of that character. I love Han Solo. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah. A very like natural original like person of this universe. He gave us the everyday man, and the everyday man was this dirty, smug scoundrel, you know, and you're kind of like, oh, like this is like the normal, this is the everyman that like just is there for his dollar, like just trying to do his part in the universe. And he's this gross but like cunning and smart, and eventually, you know, this proud and brave hero that, you know, is a savior of the rebellion, you know.
He has a lot of
his best friend just happens to be an 8-foot tall carpet.
Exactly.
Yeah, and his best friend is a giant dog.
He has good character development in that film too, because he could have easily left. They're packing all their money, you know. He's good to go, and he ends up coming back.
Whenever he shows up in the final Death Star trench run, it's an applause moment in the theater, because it's just because you totally from what you know about Solo throughout that entire movie is that he's probably going to pack up and go and use all of his money, probably gamble some more, and then
like he shows
and then when he comes back, like that is such a great resolution to his arc in that movie. And I think it says a lot about Harrison Ford's performance too, about how he is able to bring such charm to the relationship between Han Solo and Chewbacca when Chewbacca doesn't even speak English. He just speaks in roars. I think it's just so great how Harrison Ford is able to make that relationship so believable. They're so unlikely of a pair.
Also, one of my favorite scenes in that movie with Han Solo is when he's running towards this. He's chasing after the stormtrooper, and then he rounds the corner, and there's like 30 of them, and he just turns around and runs back. Oh, I love that part. He has so many funny parts of the movie. It's great.
That is one of the special edition changes that I actually do agree with, because originally when he runs in, there's like maybe 5 or 6 stormtroopers sitting there, and in the special edition they added it to be like an entire army of stormtroopers. I think it's so much more effective. But I think you bring that up. I think, moments like that and humor is such an important part of Star Wars and and the charm of Star Wars and why we love Star Wars. What are some more of your favorite, just like funny comedy moments in this movie?
I mean, C-3PO and R2, every time they fight, it's always entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, they just have like big brother, little brother. Like R2's this proud, like he's always trying to save the day. That's what R2 does. And C-3PO is just like, come on, we need to like go somewhere else. We can't be going to these places. We can't be doing this. So anytime those two are on the screen together, it's always funny. I like whenever Princess Leia calls Han Solo Flyboy, jump into the garbage chute Flyboy. It's just like those little things. Oh, the phone call scene whenever Han Solo's talking to
the boring conversation anyway.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. He's like, we're all fine here now. Thanks. How are you?
That's great.
That's totally something like somebody would panic and say in the middle of a stressful situation.
It's like there's just 300 gunshots that just went off, and he's just trying to play it off.
That's like me when I'm on the phone. I hate talking on the phone. I don't know why. The way he just like doesn't know what to say, so he shoots the comm. That's totally something I've wanted to do. But Jackson, what about you? What's some moments some funny moments that stand out to you in this movie?
I do like the banter between C-3PO and R2. It's a lot of Vader's kind of just like sassy quips. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily supposed to be funny, but it's the what when he gets shot.
I was about to say that.
Ship. What? You guys have said all the best parts. All talked about the good ones. Ooh, yeah, that's my piece on that.
Yeah, I just think throughout the entire saga, humor just plays such an important role, especially when you look at movies like The Last Jedi, and even the prequels have some good moments. But
I think an unintentional, hilarious moment that's still a classic is the stormtrooper who bumped his head on the door frame.
Yeah, and I love how they added the sound effect later on.
Yeah, right.
But you guys talk about 3PO and R2, and I think their introduction in the story is so important, and the way they take us through this entire movie is it's just so awesome, because they're the first beings we see on screen. After we see the Tantive 4 and the Star Destroyer. And then we cut in and we're with C-3PO and R2. And it's just great how 2 droids can be so integral to this story without us even realizing it.
They're kind of just the backbone of the entire film. Like you said, they are the storytellers, and C-3PO even jokes in the movie. He says, I'm not much of a I'm not very good at telling stories, when he's talking to Luke about like all the battles he's been through. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not very good at telling stories. But in reality, C-3PO and R2 tell every story. Like, what if they wouldn't have landed in Tatooine? Or what if they would have landed in a different place? What if they would have never met Luke? None of this would have happened, Yeah. Because it all happened because Luke's cleaning off R2's, he's cleaning him up and stuff, and pops open the tape that pops up of Princess Leia, and then it leads to all this stuff about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ben Kenobi, and it kind of goes to like that, your choose your destiny type thing, and sometimes if you wait long enough, like Luke has been doing nothing, for his entire life basically, and this sometimes your destiny chooses you, and you just have to wait. You know, you just have to be ready for the moment. So that's what these droids represent. All that.
Yeah, you got a lot of carbon scoring here. Looks like you two boys seen some action. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. How, and it's great how R2 has such charm, and he doesn't say a word. He just bleeps and blops. Because I just have such a soft spot for R2. He's like a pet. He's kind of. I
got so sad the first time I watched that film, and he gets shot. Like he literally gets. Yeah. Like he looks rough. He's got oil all over him. He's not turning on. He's like my old laptop. Like he looks bad.
They're all celebrating the other room.
They're all fine with it. C-3PO's like, I will give my parts away. Bring him back.
Yeah, I just love how 3PO hates R2, but he loves R2.
And
he can't imagine his life without R2.
It's like such a good brother relationship,
Like Squidward and SpongeBob.
That's a great comparison. Yeah, Squidward and SpongeBob.
Great. And George Lucas has even said that he's R2's the keeper of the story. Like this is actually like a thing that George Lucas has said, that like all the movies are basically being told by R2 as he recollects all of his memories. That's like a thing that George Lucas has said. So I think that's kind of cool how important R2 is to the telling of Star Wars. But Jackson, I know one of your favorite characters in this movie is Tarkin.
I am a big Tarkin fan. I definitely want to read his solo novel, but I wish Tarkin was in it a lot more. His methodicalness and like the just kind of towering evilness that he carries, like he's the villain of that movie, and
definitely
eventually that style of character becomes Vader, which honestly that probably was the better choice. But I wish Tarkin ended up becoming someone like they ended up doing this with like General Hux and Domhnall Gleeson's character, and just kind of that counterpart character that worked as more as the business side, whereas Kylo Ren is more of the spiritual whatever side of it, and that's what Vader and Tarkin were in that first movie. And I wish there was more of that. I love just the Alderaan scene where he makes Leia break and she says Dantooine. He's like, you shouldn't have trusted me, like let's go blow up a planet, boys. Like,
yeah,
I love it. I love Tarkin.
Yeah. I just think it feels like Thrawn is a Tarkin part 2. Tarkin 2.0.
I like that comparison. That's a really good comparison.
Absolutely.
Because I wish I could compare him to Hux, but Hux just kind of didn't have the intimidation factor.
Hux didn't carry the controlled chaos.
Yeah, and I think that is the downfall of Hux right there. I mean, this isn't really a sequel conversation, but I mean, Hux was everything. Tarkin was everything Hux wanted to be, but he failed in almost every aspect.
Yeah.
Like Tarkin had respect out of Vader. Hux couldn't even get respect out of Kylo, like it's like.
Yeah.
Hux was kind of an imbecile.
Yeah, he's just like,
Kylo.
He's kind of just like in over his head the whole time, where Tarkin's like, Tarkin literally died on the ship because he had so much pride, and he knew that, he had faith that nothing was going to happen to his superior ship because he's the one in charge of it, and he's the one in charge of everything.
And we can thank Galen Erso for putting that secret
killing
exhaust
Grand
port.
Moff Tarkin.
Yeah. I don't think Star Wars would be Star Wars without John Williams and his themes that he brings to every movie. What are some of your favorite Star Wars themes in this movie?
Man, I hate to be that guy, but my favorite theme is definitely the Cantina theme. It has to be the most. Like that scene is just the most Star Wars scene I think of any movie. It's just always going to like a cantina and seeing all the different imaginative characters and creatures that George Lucas is throwing into this universe. And then you just got that iconic, and also I used to swing dance to it back in high school, so it's got a special place in my heart. But it's also the Dual Suns, whenever Luke's
Binary Sunset,
that one just that should give you chills. Those are the most important scenes whenever that song plays.
Yeah, Jackson, what about you?
My favorite Star Wars song, like in general, my favorite one that John Williams has written was Leia's theme. It's that final crescendo of the whole orchestra. That dun, 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 dun. Love it. I go so hard to that song. It's also the TIE fighter chase scene when they escape the Death Star and they're love it. I get pumped. I use that to hype myself up.
Yeah. I think there's a reason why the Force theme / Binary Sunset is used so much throughout the saga. I mean, almost every Star Wars trailer has the da na 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 na, because it just pulls at the heartstrings. It's so emotional because the first time you experience it, fun fact, the first time you really experience it in A New Hope was whenever Leia is putting the plans into R2. We hear a little bit of the Force theme right there, but we really hear it in full effect whenever Luke is staring out into the sunset. And I think I just connect to that so much because I just think of how whenever I was a kid, I had so many aspirations and dreams that I didn't think I would be able to get to. So you can't help it just like looking off in the sunset and like, man, it would be so cool if I was able to do this. And I think that theme just like makes you feel things. And I like when themes do that.
Instead of Tatooine, we're stuck in Jefferson County looking out at it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I'm looking up and there's, people driving trucks around me instead of the dual suns.
But yeah,
I still have hope though.
And then obviously the Star Wars main theme with the crawl and the title comes up. It's just you can't help but get emotional the first time you're watching a Star Wars movie when the main titles come up.
Absolutely, I always love the closing credits. That yeah.
I know Chase has some stories about getting emotional in the theater watching Star Wars.
The first time I watch every new Star Wars film that comes out, even like some old ones, if I'm in the right mood. I mean, I cry a lot during movies, but every single time I'm in the movie theater, like Force Awakens, I had to like composure myself because as soon as that title screen popped up, I was gone. Like I was just, and it's not like sad, horrible crying. It's like I'm smiling and like so happy that I don't know how to control my emotions as a 23-year-old male. And it just comes out, like it just starts pouring out. All my friends and buddies, whenever, we go watch the new Star Wars, whichever one it is, in theaters, they always look at me at the beginning of each title screen just because they know. They're like, "Are you going to cry during this one?" I'm like, "No." And then every time it hits me right in the gut.
Yeah, I don't think I've cried more watching a Star Wars movie than whenever I was watching The Rise of Skywalker. That movie just moves me on so many ways.
So much, yeah. I love that film.
Jackson, when do you get emotional watching Star Wars?
It's definitely Return of the Jedi. It's the celebration scene. It's the entire galaxy like coming together.
Oh, it's not the Max Rebo sequence.
No, yeah, right. It's watching that Twi'lek girl get eaten by a Rancor. That's what really gets me.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's just super easy to get lost in the emotions when you're watching Star Wars, but I think Star Wars, especially really early on, it made a really big point to include a lot of social commentary. I mean, you see that with when the droids are coming into the cantina and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, we don't serve your kind here," and they kind of shoo them away. What kind of social commentary have you picked up watching at least this movie through Star Wars?
It's definitely the Nazis.
Yeah, yeah, especially the Nazis. I mean,
especially the Nazis. Yeah.
Chase, what do you think?
It's kind of like, so we always see like Star Wars as this like crazy sci-fi like world and universe and all this like, oh man, it's just like just dramatized situations of everything. But like if you really like break it down, the Empire is similar to a lot of like dictatorships and stuff like that. Yeah. And hell, even in America, like, you know, you get these leaders and people that are in charge of, you know, these high up positions that abuse their power for more power. They're just there to grow and making other people's lives miserable. And there's people that are trying to rebel against it. And I think Star Wars always kind of has that, like, that political kind of aura in the background of every film. And I think it should make you think, you know, hey, what can we do to make the world a better place? Like, these people made the galaxy a better place. What can we do to improve our daily lives and go up against these tyrants and stuff like that?
Yeah. I think that's also, to your point, what makes Star Wars so timeless is there's always something you can compare real world events to in Star Wars, whether it's, you know, the whole dictatorship thing or, you know, racial injustice. And like, especially we've been seeing that a lot, you know, in recent times. I think that's really important to recognize. Jackson, did you have anything?
It's definitely like, I think in today's society, wow, get your words together, boy. It's the fact that, especially for someone like Luke, who's kind of thrown into the world that the Empire isn't necessarily the best. You know, some people like them and some people don't, and I think
it's a divided world out there. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's definitely, I think now more than ever to see how, you know, the people who promise everything to you aren't exactly the good guys, and that's what gives the big importance of the rebellion. Is, you know, they're just trying to do what's right, you know, and I think that's kind of a big message to take, especially in kind of today's society and certain countries' governments that are kind of betraying its own people and making them corporate slaves. That's my own peace of mind. You know, it's that. Do what's right. Fight for what you believe
question
in.
Question everything too. Like, question the higher, like, they're higher powers, but they, like you said,
that doesn't mean
they're good people. You know,
better and equal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super. Especially like Star Wars has always made a point to like make sure that
it's about everybody.
Yeah,
it's about everybody,
and making sure you're standing up for yourself and what you think is right. Whether other people think it's right or not, it's stand up for what you believe in and what you think is the right way to go about things, which is really important. Kind of closing out here, this is kind of just more of a fun topic. What are some of your favorite kind of background side characters in this movie?
I mean, I like Biggs just because they talk about him so much in the beginning, and he kind of gets his little, 5 seconds of fame, I guess, towards the end of the film. Ends up getting shot down, but I just like how, you know, it's cool that Luke had like this cool little group of friends that we don't really see very much of. I just like kind of like that backstory of Luke, and I mean, I don't read as much as you guys do, and I'm sure they dive into it a little more, but I like Biggs a lot.
They do. They talk about it in the New Hope novelization by George Lucas. There's a chapter where Luke goes to this like cantina that's by his settlement, and he meets his friends, and Biggs shows up and is like, hey, he pulls Luke aside and he's like, hey, like, I'm defecting, like I'm joining the rebellion. And Luke at the time is very much like, oh wow, I don't know how I feel about that. Like that's kind of out there, dude. Like that's kind of crazy. And I think it's definitely a really cool moment for Luke to be introduced. It's very natural because it makes it feel more like this has been on Luke's mind. Kind of explains Luke going out to actually kind of be curious about Obi-Wan and eventually be joining and, you know, going on this adventure. So
I would have loved if they had characters. That would have been great.
Yeah, I think it would have been. I think it would have been a really cool scene. Yeah, I think for background characters, I'm a fan of Greedo. I like I love the introduction of like the dangers that, especially Han Solo. Like it gives us more like this is not a fun and playful world that Luke has kind of been around in his whole life, and I love just how Greedo looks and like the sound of his voice
Such
and all
a cool
that.
Voice.
You know?
Yeah.
The Rhodian eyes are always my favorite. They look like galaxies.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think whenever I think of characters in this movie, my mind immediately goes to the Cantina because it's such a great showcase of all the different species in Star Wars and the way the galaxy interacts.
The diverse world, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I do love the Cantina Band guys. They're just
killing it up
so
there.
Cool.
They're going hard.
Yeah, they didn't need to go that hard, but they went hard for us.
Yeah, there's actually in the certain point of view chapter, there's a point where it's a Rockstar diary log, and it's one of the Bith like players, and he talks about in it how when they get the job at the Cantina, their one rule is that they can't stop playing, and it didn't matter what would happen. So like as like the songs, like as they're playing the song, he's like, we watched a man get his arm chopped off, Greedo got shot, like there was just a fight happening, some stormtroopers came in, like
just keep playing. They're like the guys on the Titanic.
And it was like, just don't stop, just keep playing, we'll get fired if we do, just keep going.
I do like Ponda Baba and the other guy. I got the death sentence in 12 systems.
12 systems.
Okay, I'll be careful.
I don't like you either.
Yeah. I just think that's just the way they immediately go out of their way because they want to scare Luke.
I feel like
and then Obi-Wan just cuts Ponda Baba's arm off.
It's just like a perfect like representation of a random drunk dude at a bar. That's just like the one guy that cannot be drinking as much as he should because he gets angry every time. That's that guy at the bar. Like, oh, what? You say something to me? The guy's like, what are you talking about?
You're staring at me.
Yeah, what are you looking at me? It's like, dude, I'm waiting for a drink.
I'm dissociating, man. Leave me alone.
I've beaten people up before. It's like, cool. All right.
I'll be careful. You'll be dead.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, I think that is it. That was our A New Hope discussion. Thank you so much, Chase, for hopping on here. We had such a great time talking to you. I hope we can get you back on again. But where can they find you on all your social medias?
Yeah, so just for Twitter, it's ChaseyJ2. Instagram, it's thechaseyj. And then if you are interested in sports, like Sports Podcast, PSO Sports 1 on Twitter and Instagram, and Pointless Sports Opinions on everything else. And yeah, I had a great time. I hope I can get on here again. Absolutely.
Jackson, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Quackson. That's Quackson, and Scalene like the triangle. And then you can follow my photography Instagram, which is at Daleen_photography, which is Daleen is Daleen. Braydon, what about you?
And you can find me on Instagram at braydonleadbetter and Twitter at braydathalon. And then for the podcast, if you want to look us up on all our socials, we are at Imperial Eyes Pod on Twitter and at Through Imperial Eyes Pod on Instagram. And then if you want to search us up on YouTube, if you're a YouTube person, you can just search up Through Imperial Eyes Podcast. We should pop up if you put podcast there at the end. But make sure you guys are leaving that rating, leaving that review on Apple Podcasts. It really, really helps out the show, and subscribing on there. And make sure to follow us on Spotify and all of those different podcast streaming platforms. And if you do have any questions for us, or you want us to talk about anything on the show, on any of the shows, make sure you hit up all of our social medias, send us a message, send us an email, add us, whatever, because we're always taking messages and we're always taking questions to talk about on our main show. So next week we will be back with more news, and next Saturday we'll be talking about Empire Strikes Back with another guest. But until then, if Jackson and Chase don't have anything else,
no, I'm good.
Cool.
I'm all good.
Until then, may the Force be with you.